me, X-Men. No longer am I the woman you know. I am fire and life incarnate. Now and forever, I am Phoenix!
That line is most famously said by Jean Grey in the Dark Phoenix Saga by Chris Claremont. Now, if you know me, you know I love superheroes. But I have to come clean. I barely read comics all that much. Not because I don't want to. Believe me, I want to. But I don't really have that much access in my area other than like the library. So I did get the chance to read the Dark Phoenix Saga, so I jumped at this chance. Now, before I get into the summary and review of this book, I'm going to go over the structure of this video. I'm going to summarize the book in two parts. We'll go over key background information, then cutting in with my stray thoughts. So without further ado, I give you opens up with the fallout from the Proteus Saga. The X-Men are saying their final goodbyes to Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, Moira Taggart, Proteus' mother, Jamie Madrox, Multiple Man, Alex Summers, Havoc, and Lorna Dane, aka Polaris. On the flight back, Jean Grey, aka Phoenix, gets a psychic shift, shifting her from present day back to the 18th century, into what she believes is the body of an ancestor who's in love with a man named Jason Wingard. Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, being a good boyfriend, immediately notices that something is troubling Jean. Then Scott offers to help, which Jean denies. Then the couple embraces before the scene cuts to Westchester, where the X-Mansion is located. The X-Men get an alert from inside the mansion. They burst inside to find Professor Charles Xavier waiting for them. Xavier is the leader of the X-Men. Now, to cut in briefly, if you're like me and confused on why it was a surprise to find Professor X in his house, it was because he was supposed to be acting as Imperial Consort to Empress Lalandra. Back to the summary. Xavier is being an asshole to the current roster of the X-Men, particularly Logan Howlett, aka Wolverine, to which Scott tries to talk to Xavier about, telling him that the team of X-Men aren't like children like the original five, only to be met with this reaction. Forgive my bluntness, Scott, but to me that betokens a failure of leadership on your part. This anarchy is a result on your failure to teach these mutants how to be a team. If you think this reaction is a bit extreme, congratulations, you agree with Claremont. As Scott tries to put his concerns into words, Cerebro gets two pings, one in Chicago and one in New York City. So the team splits up into two, Gene, Scott, and Kurt Wagner, aka Nightcrawler, going to New York City, and the rest going to Chicago. Cut to Deerfield, Illinois, where we find one Kitty Pryde, whose parents are getting a divorce that is rocking her world. Entering her house to find her parents talking to a strange woman named Miss Frost. Don't worry about it. And this is not helping since Kitty was already suffering from debilitating headaches. Her mom tells her to go upstairs and she'll bring Kitty an aspirin in a bit. The headache is worse than any Kitty's ever had before. It feels like she's dying. She closes her eyes, trying to stop the pain, but when she opens them, she's fallen through the floor into the living room. Her mother is rightfully confused by this, asking her why she's on the living room floor, to which Kitty says she came down from a glass of water and tripped on the carpet. After that, Miss Frost is going to leave the Pride family's house, hoping they reach out to her. Just as she's leaving, Professor X, Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, Peter Rasputin, aka Colossus, and Wolverine approach the parents on their doorstep, where the parents ask Kitty to go to the malt shop with Xavier's students. In the malt shop, Kitty and Aurora are very clearly on the way to being fast friends, with Aurora even telling her that they are the X-Men. With Peter and Logan, Logan grabs a paper, intentionally not paying for it, which upsets the clerk. The clerk, reasonably, demands Logan to pay for the magazine, which Logan has an adverse reaction to. Before Logan could brutalize this clerk, the malt shop is attacked by men in purple armor with yellow weapons. I couldn't find a name for these people, so I'm just gonna call them this. Colossus gets attacked first, the man spraying him with a flamethrower, which he can actually feel. Wolverine then tries to attack one of them, failing to do so because of some type of force field. The armored man retaliates by kicking him into the booth where Kitty Pryde is sitting. This kick knocks Kitty through the wall with her powers, not through the force of the kick, which causes her to pass out from exhaustion. Meanwhile outside, Storm and Wolverine realize that these men seem to be perfectly fit to their powers, so they decide to proverbially switch partners. This goes really well for them, dispatching the armored men easily, to which Colossus assumes that Professor X would be proud of them. When all of a sudden, a telepathic bolt knocks all three of them out, the origin being Emma Frost, who was disguised as Miss Frost earlier. I mean, she'd be important. Emma comments that Wingard, the same Jason Wingard as earlier, was right about the X-Men, but the Hellfire Club has an unbeatable edge, knowing all facets of their being. This is actually a great segue into something I find very funny. Every single Hellfire goon has a real first name, such as this one, who's named Cutler, which is something you don't really find in modern media. Within the aircraft, Emma has the goons strip the X-Men down to removing the lockpicks in Storm's headdress. One of the goons asks Emma, "What about Kitty?" To which Emma replies that the Hellfire Club wanted the X-Men, and if they really wanted the girl, they'd get her. Really, if they wanted to find Kitty, all they'd have to do is turn around where Kitty, via concentrating, is able to control her powers finally, and walk through the wall, which ends her headaches, or at least we never hear about them again. Kitty wonders how she's going to save the X-Men from the Hellfire Club when we cut away to... On Delano Street in Lower Manhattan, we find Scott, Jean, and Kurt exiting the X-Men's Rolls-Royce, Scott being a little disappointed by the location of this mutant. Nightcrawler personally doesn't see why they're nervous. There are plenty of shadows for him to hide in after all. We cut to two Hellfire goons, who give us a quick summary on these three's abilities. Jean is a psychic, Scott has eye portals, and Nightcrawler can teleport. Scott tells Nightcrawler that, for obvious reasons, he's going to watch the Rolls Royce, clearly expecting some sort of trouble, quote, getting careful in his old age. Scott and Jean enter the building, noting that they don't like this building, or the sort into it. We cut away again to a Hellfire goon named Rhodey, who tells Shaw that they can hit the X-Men anytime they want. But Wingard warns against it, because the X-Men are not to be messed with, to which Shaw replies that he shouldn't be either. Shaw states that they've done well against the X-Men already, which Wingard says that he'll believe that Shaw can capture them all when he sees it, and he'll continue manipulating Jean onto their side. When Wingard leaves, Shaw receives a call from one Emma Frost, who basically just goes over the previous segment, adding that the fact that they managed to capture Charles Xavier. While these two talk, Kitty snuck around the facility, still unsure of what to do next, reflecting over her experiences in the previous segment. She thinks about how she befriended Storm so quickly that she can't abandon the X-Men now, so she goes over to the cage where Storm is hanging. Storm notices that the goons didn't take a tag from the inside of her bra, handing the slip inside over to Kitty. However, the goons catch Storm talking to Kitty, but not before Storm gives the note to Kitty. As Kitty escapes the goons, we cut back to Jean, where she bumps into a man who looks surprisingly like Jason Wingard, her ancestor's lover. Suddenly, reality changes back around her, and she's back at the 18th century, and where she's waiting to be married to Sir Jason Wingard. They're announced as man and wife. Her ancestors revealed as the Black Queen of the Hellfire Gala. Pause. They are named after chess pieces, so just not race, chess pieces. We cut back to the present, where Jean is now kissing Jason Wingard in front of Scott. Jean reasonably talks to Scott about it, but he's too shocked by her actions and caught off guard by the announcer announcing the singer coming onto the stage, Dazzler. Scott realizes, with the help of his Cerebro watch, that Dazzler is in fact the mutant they were searching for. Meanwhile, outside, the night is still quiet. Then Nightcrawler realizes that the phone in the Rolls Royce is ringing. When he picks it up, he hears the voice of one Kitty Pryde, and even though they haven't met yet, Kurt is willing to help her save the other X-Men. Before Kurt could get any answers from Kitty, the Royce is attacked by another man in purple armor. But thankfully, Nightcrawler can teleport. Kurt teleports away, but before he can teleport to warn Jean and Scott, the man he's pursuing hits him with a sonic beam that disrupts his powers, which I don't understand. Inside, Jean tells Scott that needs to talk to him, to which Scott replies that they could talk later after this occurrence. Just as Dazzler had the audience fully captured, two more purple-armored men burst into the room. In response, Jean instantly turns the street clothes she and Scott were wearing into their costumes. They attack the men, but it seems they were prepared for them too. However, what the men weren't prepared for is Dazzler, where she then melts one of their fucking brains with her powers. Luckily, the man whose brain she melted was the one who got a countermeasure from Jean, who then easily gets rid of the countermeasure against Scott. As that happens, Nightcrawler and the man pursuing him fall in, and Jean easily dispatches his pursuer. After this, I cannot give enough credit to this panel, so I have to read it aloud. Call me Dazzler, darling. That's my name. That's what I do. Dazzle people. Have you ever wondered where your light powers come from? Nope. After that pretty funny interaction, Cyclops, Phoenix, Nightcrawler, and Dazzler jump into the Rolls Royce and drive all the way to Chicago, Illinois, just in time to save Kitty Pryde from the goons. In the Blackbird, Kitty explains all that happened leading up to the X-Men being captured. Jean then scans the mind of the goon they managed to capture, learning all about Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club. Jean isn't stupid and is able to connect the dots between her past self of the Hellfire Club today, but she doesn't tell Scott about it. Using a random goon's body, his name is Sal by the way, the gang manages to sneak into the facility. The goon who checked Sal in, named Elton, was on a comm line with Emma. Notice that Sal's team being able to capture the X-Men is very impressive. Cutting to Emma, we see that she has Storm on this thing for examination and seems to be mentally torturing her with her psychic powers. We cut to the room with the cages, where we find Kitty in a rip-off S.H.I.E.L.D. uniform breaking Wolverine out. Shortly before Wolverine recovers, some goons blast Kitty. And after Wolverine pops his claws, we cut away to Scott and the rest of the team. Scott and Jean telepathically coordinate the team to attack, so they can break out the rest of the X-Men. Scott uses his optic blast to destroy the roof of the car so Dazzler can do, well, what she does best, dazzle. While the goons are sufficiently dazzled, the team breaks into the facility. Jean splits off from the team and finds Emma, who is in the middle of saying to Storm that the only thing the X-Men would find here would be a mindless one. Jean notes that Emma is a telepath and wants to, quote, see how good you really are. Then we cut back to Scott, Dazzler, and Nightcrawler fighting some goons. Nightcrawler does this admittedly really cool trick where he rapidly teleports and knockouts the goons, quote, before the first hits the ground. Wolverine and Colossus, who is holding Kitty, come out from behind a corner, with the only mention of what happened to them being what Wolverine dealt with them. The X-Men go to find Jean and Storm, but we see from Storm's POV that Jean obliterates Emma in a fiery psychic blast. Back at Kitty's house, Professor X asks Dazzler if she'd like to join the X-Men, but she says she'd rather be on stage and she'll be in touch. Nightcrawler leaves to take Dazzler out of the airport as Kitty's parents come inside. Father, reasonably upset, starts yelling at Xavier. Then Jean, sick of his bullshit, psychically persuades her father to be more impressed with Xavier. Storm and Scott talk, noting that there's a new wrongness in Jean. The incidents with Emma and Katie's dad are either both coincidences or something bad is going to happen. Instead of going back to the X-Mansion, where they go to where Angel, another member of the X-Men, is currently living. Then she just kind of kisses Angel in front of Scott and Angel's current girlfriend, Candy Southern, to which Scott has no objections, implying something about him, but Candy has a small problem. Scott tells Angel that he'd like a word with him in private, to which Angel responds by saying, "Privacy you want, privacy you got," and carries Scott away. Scott and Angel land, where Scott basically explains everything I did when they're doing some detective work to find out what the Hellfire Club was and what it wanted. Angel does recall that, but he's extremely confused by them being involved. It's an old, risque yet establishment club, recalling that he and Kitty visited once before he revealed his identity. As the two continue talking, Jean floats down with a basket, and Angel notes that he no longer seems to be wanted here. Jean lays out a blanket and gets rid of her clothes, except for her underwear, noting that Scott is in fact brooding, which is what he does best. Then Jean lifts his visor, to which Scott has many objections, but Jean tells him that she is blocking his optic glass with her immense psychic power, and then they make love there. 1 week later, in the sewer near where the Hellfire Club is, Wolverine and Nightcrawler are sneaking around. Wolverine then cuts the insulation off the wire that protects the power, just in case the sewer floods. It'll knock out the lights. Nightcrawler calms Scott, telling him that Wolvie and him are in a position and ready to make a move. Thankfully, Angel has managed to secure 4 invites for the Hellfire Club for Jean, Scott, Aurora, and Peter. When Scott logs off the call, Xavier notes that he's worried he won't be able to help them until it's too late. At the club, Peter thinks back to how much he misses his home and how he's never worn anything as nice as this before. As Jean and Scott walk in, we cut to the Hellfire Club's inner circle, where we see a man named Donald Pierce, noting that Jean Grey and Scott Summers are at the club. Shaw then commands Wingard to go and handle the X-Men, noting that he has been saying that Jean is his in both mind and soul, that she can lead the attack against the X-Men. Wingard makes his way to the Hellfire Club, where he takes Jean away from Scott. Scott notes that he doesn't believe the time slips and this new Jason Wingard are a coincidence. He chases after the two, where we see finally who Jason Wingard is, the villain mastermind. Before Scott can warn the rest of the X-Men, Jean, now as the Black Queen, knocks him out. However, Scott did scream, and Peter and Aurora heard that, so they suit up and go in direction of the scream, and encounter a man named Sebastian Shaw. Colossus swings at Shaw, but it does nothing against him, who uppercuts Colossus, saying how Colossus has only made him stronger. Shaw tries to jump on Colossus, but Peter knocks him away with all of his might. But once again, it does nothing to Shaw, who then picks him up and swings Colossus like a rag doll. Elsewhere, Nightcrawler and Wolverine break into the club, only to encounter Pierce and Harry Leland. Pierce grabs Kurt by the throat, and Wolverine cuts his hand off, only for it to be revealed that Pierce is a robot. Oh, my bad. He's a cyborg. Pierce throws Logan to the side, where Logan tries to get back on him, but he's blocked by Leland. Unfortunately for Logan, Leland's powers are that he can increase the mass of anything, and Wolverine is already 300 pounds, so he just sends him through the floor, where he's washed away into the sewers. Back with Storm, she's flying through the club trying to escape Shaw, but she's caught, so she kicks him trying to break free, but he grabs her by the cape and knocks her out with one punch. We cut to a room with all the captured X-Men and the Inner Circle, where Wingard insults Pierce, and the Black Queen says that they shouldn't spoil this moment with harshness. Shaw notes that Wingard is almost certainly after his position as Black Queen, as he throws Storm onto the pile with the rest of the team. The Inner Circle raises their glasses to the Black Queen. Then we cut away to the sewers, where Wolverine is barely holding on, and we get a definitely unique idea. Wolverine alone. Wolverine is hanging above several Hellfire goons when he gets the drop on him, literally. And he definitely doesn't kill the goons. No, he would never. By the way, this one's name is Angela. We cut back to where the inner circle is holding the rest of the team. Shaw congratulates Wingard on his job of capturing the X-Men, and we get to see a vision of what Jean's seeing. She believes that she actually is in the 18th century and has only an allegiance to the Hellfire Club. And we see that she sees Storm as this escaped slave and slaps her for talking back or daring to call her a friend. Scott gets an idea. Maybe he can break the rapport Mastermind has on Jean by using the rapport he and Jean have, which they established while making love. Nightcrawler takes the moment to ask Shaw why. Why are the X-Men still alive? To which Shaw responds that their goal is eugenics, using the X-Men as guinea pigs essentially. Back with Wolfie, he's trying to make sure he doesn't get caught by the Hellfire goons or the civilians, when he is caught at gunpoint by a Hellfire goon. Meanwhile, Scott uses the rapport and enters the astral plane, which to him is an all-white void that still fascinates him. His clothes have changed to an 18th century counterpart when he comes across a door. The door opens to reveal Jean, and Scott tries to make her remember. He tells her how he and she were lovers once, but Mastermind intervenes, saying that Scott is wasting his time. In order to bring her back to her senses, Scott has to duel Mastermind in the astral plane under his own terms. Doesn't help that Mastermind is trained in sword fight, and he's not. Scott falls onto the floor, seemingly dead, leaving the rest of the team in confusion. He's not dead. It's a fake-out cliffhanger, which surprises the X-Men just as much. As Scott tries to stand back up, Mastermind says, Jean Grey belongs to the Hellfire Club, body and soul, now and forever. And just look how sure she is of that. There's a commotion and Wolverine breaks into the room. Butler's draped around him. As this happens, Mastermind orders Jean to deal with him, but as she does that, she also lifts the ruby quartz off of Scott's head. Scott hits Pierce with the quartz, then breaks the other X-Men's chains. Then he breaks Leland through the wall with his optic blast. Then Jean orders Wolvie to go after Leland, which he happily obliges, citing that Leland owes him a rematch. Shaw says to Scott that if he even touches him, he'll only get stronger, to which Scott then destroys the floor under his feet. Pierce shouts for Shaw, but Colossus picks him up. But he's so dumb here that he doesn't go metal, and Pierce, the super cyborg, just kicks him away. Cyclops orders Cyclops to armor up, and for him, Storm, and Nightcrawler to go after Shaw, that he'll handle Mastermind by himself. Mastermind, at this moment, uses his illusion powers to try and blend in with the wall. We cut to Leland, who's falling with Wolverine above him. Instinctively, he uses his powers, making Wolverine weigh more, but that just makes him fall faster, killing Leland. We cut to Avengers Headquarters, where we find Hank McCoy, aka Beast, another previous member of the X-Men, alone reading a book, with the title that is too long for me to read here, when he gets an alert on the alarm. He reads the alert that says the X-Men, or what's believed to be the X-Men, is attacking the Hellfire Club, and Hank makes the difficult choice to not learn the rest of the tea. We cut back to Colossus, who is in a standoff with Pierce. Pierce seems to have the upper hand and is talking a whole lot of shit to Colossus, but then Colossus stands up and snaps Pierce's robotic arms, getting a little soliloquy on how he's human. Pierce puts the exposed robotics in Colossus's eyes, temporarily blinding him for long enough to escape. However, upstairs, Cyclops is running through the crowd, unaware that Mastermind is making it look like he's attacking civilians with his illusion powers. When the sewer floods to the point where Wolvie cut the wires earlier, knocking out the lights, Scott and Wolvie meet up in the hallway, and Scott asks him, hey, what happened to Leland? Only to be met with a, don't ask. We cut to Mastermind, where behind him Jean stands motionless, secretly terrified because she knows what's going to happen next. And I'm just going to read you these next few panels of Jean's dialogue. You made a mistake, Jason. You slew the man I loved before my eyes. Instead of surrendering my last connection to the X-Men, that acted like a bucket of ice water to my face. Instead of enslaving me forever, you shocked me awake. You set me free. Jean, filled with righteous anger, shoots a fiery blast of psychic energy at Mastermind, slamming him against the wall, slowly killing him. However, before she kills him, she needs to know one thing. Mastermind's not a telepath. He's an illusionist. She wants to know how he tricked her. He reveals that the White Queen, Emma Frost, again, chess pieces, not race, gave him a mind tap mechanism, the comics words, not mine, that allowed him to project the illusion into Jean's mind and to be able to monitor her thoughts. Jean tells Mastermind how he used her. He tailored his illusions to her deepest, darkest fantasies. And how it's only fair if she does the same thing. Mastermind's mind expands at the speed of thought, made up thing in Marvel cosmology. He tries to run, but he can't. His mind is too small for this, and he instantly goes brain dead. Transfixed by an inhuman joy, her soul spreads its wings and soars towards a destiny that will no longer be denied. Scott runs in the room, begging for Jean. The rest of the X-Men enter the hallway, escaping the building as the police close in, while Shaw monologues to himself. Cyclops touches a stud on his wrist, calling the Blackbird to him. His number one goal is to get Jean to Professor X so he can help her, but his efforts prove to be in vain as...
For me, X-Men, no longer am I the woman you know. I am fire and life incarnate. Now and forever, I am Phoenix!
For this summary, I'm going to go over everything I disliked, found funny, and what I liked. Not exclusively in that order. The first thing that caught my eye was how clever Claremont wrote Mastermind's manipulation of Jean. The audience already knows that Wingard is manipulating Jean, but we don't know who he is or how he's doing it. I adore this. Claremont adds to it by making everyone realize it. Well, except for the characters that aren't really that close with her, like Colossus or Kitty. But they can't do anything because she's not reaching out for help. I feel this book so far doesn't really focus on the race metaphor of the X-Men as much, except the brief moments with Nightcrawler where Kitty doesn't really like him, which I excluded from the review because it's not important, or like the men hunting them down. However, it does do the disability metaphor well. It shows that Kitty and Scott both have struggles and concerns about their powers, even though they're different, but they're still similar. They're still struggles. Kitty's struggles feel more similar to a kid who's closeted or has a mental disability like ADHD, autism, or anxiety, whereas Scott's disabilities feel more like a physical disability, just as blindness, literally being unable to open his eyes without ruby quartz or blasting his lasers everywhere. I really enjoyed how Claremont wrote the X-Men as people. All of them feel unique to one another, different in some ways, but similar in others. Like Scott and Aurora both care about Jean, and both notice how she's acting off. Or how Kitty and Dazzler are both new mutants. No, not that kind, but they aren't alike in the slightest personality-wise. They both struggle with their powers, but Dazzler's powers are much more dangerous than Kitty's. See the melting of a guy's brain. However, Kitty also has struggles with her powers, having to focus on phasing and randomly phasing through walls and floors. So their struggles, ultimately different, but struggles nonetheless. One of the only flaws to me in this book so far are some of the villains, especially Harry Leland and Emma Frost. More so with the former and less so with the latter. Let's start with Leland, because he's the main problem. Leland is by far the most forgettable part of this book. He sends Wolverine into the sewer and then just dies later. Emma is less of a flaw, but she is more of a tool for the story than an actual character. She knocks out the X-Men and tortures Storm, then dies to Jean. However, this does make her a stronger case than Leland. Emma furthers the story via G's display, which tips Storm and Scott off to the wrongness within her, and this does feel necessary to the plot. Besides Emma and Leland, the other three villains feel way more necessary and more threatening. Shaw, when he first fought Colossus and Storm, felt indestructible, and Shaw even escaped, proving that he could still be a threat later. Pierce is admittedly one of the weaker villains. He isn't beaten at all, unless you count Colossus ripping his arms off. He also escapes, maybe also symbolizing a return in another book. Mastermind is, unsurprisingly, the strongest villain in this book. As I stated earlier, Claremont's writing of Mastermind, oh, it's so good. Mastermind feels threatening, especially with his fake out killing of Scott. It makes him feel very serious as a threat, and I just think he's the best writer for this plot. I do also appreciate Angel, Beast, and Professor X's brief appearances so far. I enjoy how Claremont isn't portraying Xavier as a fully morally good character. He's a person with flaws that isn't well fitted to lead this new team of X-Men. Angel and Beast's appearances are really good for world building. They show that the X-Men aren't entirely alone in their fights. They have old friends around the world that will go to some lengths to help them. There aren't many things I dislike about this book so far, excluding Harry Leland. And the fact that Claremont can include moments that are fun and of levity is truly a testament to his writing skills. When Jean, scratch that, Phoenix, destroys Mastermind's mind, it is a truly believable downward spiral for her. She was manipulated into loving a man who killed the man she loved in front of her, a man who coerced her into harming her friends. So her going Dark Phoenix is entirely believable and somewhat justified. That is my review for part 1 of the Dark Phoenix Saga. So stay tuned for Phoenix blows up the Blackbird, causing the X-Men to fall from 1,000 feet above Manhattan, with each of them having their own ways of surviving the fall. Storm knows the team needs time to recover, so she sends winds at Dark Phoenix, sending herself one way and Dark Phoenix the other. Storm, Wolverine, and Cyclops land where Colossus and Nightcrawler landed, just in time to be attacked by Dark Phoenix, once more with the comic describing her as the Angel of Death. Scott tries to ask Jean for pity's sake why she's attacking them, only for Dark Phoenix's response to not be asked for pity, for she has none to give. She strikes at the X-Men once again, with Colossus trying to use a tree to ensnare Dark Phoenix. But he forgot she was a telepath, and she turned off his metal skin. Wolverine tries to jump in and save her, which Dark Phoenix turns it into gold. Storm begs Jean to stop and that they can help her, but Dark Phoenix replies that she has no use of their help and she doesn't have friends. Storm connects this terrible power to when Jean saved the universe. Back then, she had love and joy tempering her, but Dark Phoenix has no love or joy, just an all-consuming lust. Dark Phoenix tells Storm to take her best shot, but to no avail. She quickly and easily dispatches her, saying that even though she has a great power, it is nothing compared to Dark Phoenix. Scott calls out for Storm. He's overwhelmed by the images in his psychic rapport. Black fire consuming Jean's soul. Mystic illusions. She's drowning. Nightcrawler yells for Scott, asking what to do. But Dark Phoenix replies instead, saying that they can do nothing, hitting them 100 different ways at once, the last two X-Men falling in their tracks. Dark Phoenix says that she didn't want to do this, but she had to do this, to sever the last ties binding her to her previous life. She reaches for the skies, summoning lightning around her, saying that the X-Men and her will no longer cross paths, as her destiny lies in the stars. We cut to the Thing and Reed Richards in the Baxter building, where Reed is reading some strange energy reading on his computer. We then cut to Manhattan's west side, where Spider-Man's spider sense is going off. In Greenwich Village, Doctor Strange senses a great evil and passion. Our final cut is weirdly to space, where we see Silver Surfer. He says that he senses a kindred soul, a child of the stars, one so like him, yet not. He says that she is human, flawed, and that flaw is destroying her, and he must help her any way he can. We then see Dark Phoenix flying away from Earth, bidding her homeworld goodbye, literally flying past a Quinjet, which Beast is inside, commenting that it was, in fact, her Phoenix effect. Beast lands at the area where the X-Men were defeated and helps Scott up, but Scott tells him that he's okay and to cede to the others, while Scott checks with Aurora. Beast lifts the solid gold tree off of Wolverine and Colossus. The X-Men fly away in the Quinjet, and while Beast is describing a section to Scott, we cut away to New Mexico, where we find Angel and Professor X on a video call with Moira Taggart and Banshee. Moira and Xavier basically talk about what I just did, but Professor X has how they must return to New York and how he is partly to blame for this tragedy. In space, we find Dark Phoenix flying past the sun and Star Core 1, which I truly have no idea what that is. Please comment if you do. Phoenix knows what she's become, and she knows her dream of order and harmony is corrupted now, but she doesn't care. She uses the slingshot effect to travel far past Jupiter, creating a stargate and traveling to a galaxy far, far away, searching for something to eat. Plunging herself into a nearby star, she begins to consume it. The star, as it is consumed, goes supernova, lighting up a nearby planet that houses an ancient, peace-loving civilization. Those that are awake to see the light are confused and frightened. Half the planet is lucky enough to die in their sleep. The other half, not so much. Nearby is the first real obstacle to Dark Phoenix's quest. A top-of-the-line Shi'ar battlecruiser. Inside, we see the captain demanding for tactical, where they say that the star, Dabari, has exploded, which is most unusual as it is a G-class star. And though it might flare, it would not explode. Another member of the crew states that this morning Dabari was a healthy star, no unusual signs or abnormal matrices, which they deduce that something, or someone, must have made it explode, when across the readings they detect a life form. The captain yells for the crew to man battle stations, which is reasonable as Dark Phoenix did destroy 5 billion people who were allies to the Shi'ar Empire. The crew fires a plasma bolt at Dark Phoenix, who, in response, quickly and easily destroys one of the wings of the ship, then taking a quick break to mind scan the ship. Back on the ship, one of the assistants tells the captain that the warp power is down to 40%, and also says that they should get out of there, to which the captain denies, telling the assistants they cannot outrun the Dark Phoenix. The captain then demands for them to establish an instalink to the Shi'ar, as he must speak with the Empress. We got to the Shi'ar Empress's chamber, where a chamberlain is bursting in, screaming for her attention. The Empress Lalandra is in a hurry. The captain of that ship was personally trained by her and is very valuable to the Empire. The captain tells her that they're beaten. No power, no weapons, nothing. But he does bring attention to the Phoenix, which is destroying the ship. The ship explodes, with Lalandra and one of her servants witnessing it through the Instalink. Lalandra recognizes the Phoenix, as they had interacted in the past, then orders her chamberlain to summon the ministers. Back on Earth, specifically in Xavier's mansion, we cut to the X-Men in the kitchen, where Scott is not taking Jean's turn to Dark Phoenix well at all. Colossus says that he wishes there was some way to help, to which Wolverine says to not get his hopes up. Storm comments that she finds it hard to believe that Wolverine is giving up. Wolverine responds that he may be summoned, he's not stupid, he's a realist, and Jean defeated easily the first time. Then he asks the room if they think a second encounter would go any better. Beast responds that it could work, and teamwork could help, and he'd built gadgets that make the odds a bit more equal. Scott then suddenly bolts up from his stupor, saying, "No, oh no." Nightcrawler asks Scott what's wrong, as he says it's Phoenix. He senses her through their rapport. She's returning to Earth, and she's hungry. We cut back to the Shi'ar Empire, where Lilandra has gathered her ministers. She briefs her ministers on the threat of the Phoenix, comparing her to Galactus, saying that his hunger pales in comparison to hers. Lilandra then has one of her servants, with a name that I'm not going to bother pronouncing, go over more or less everything I just did. Then Lilandra adds how she met Phoenix when Jean and the X-Men stopped the Mad Emperor from destroying the universe, and how it looks she is picking up where he left off, and so she must be destroyed. Back at the X-Mansion, the X-Men have split into two groups, with Beast, Cyclops, and Storm working on the device to deal with her, while Wolvie, Colossus, and Nightcrawler are training in the Danger Room. While training, Colossus comments how he thought working out would make him feel better, to which Wolverine responds that he gets the feeling. Jean was special to him, and he's worried about her. In Annandale, New York, Dark Phoenix touches down at her childhood home. But it's not Dark Phoenix's childhood home. It's Jean Grey's. Jean Grey was once described as all that was good in humanity, all that was love, caring, gentle. Jean's family comes downstairs, and she can't block out their thoughts. And to be fair to her, I would think nothing is sacred anymore after I saw my dad's thoughts late at night. She reads their thoughts. Dad and Mom are both on edge. Sarah's scared her two kids are going to be mutants like her. But what's so wrong with that? She's power incarnate. She's Dark Phoenix. They fear her for good reason. She is what she is, and she was their daughter. Her father casts her out as a fog rolls in. Storm is a weather witch. It must be her doing. Nightcrawler teleports in and puts the scrambler on her head, but she throws him away, writhing in pain. Colossus grabs her ankle and tells her to surrender. The accursed device may limit her powers, but she is far from helpless. The rest of the X-Men jump on her, but she deals with all of them. When Wolvie is on her, she tells him to strike her down, but Dark Phoenix takes control again and blasts him away, tearing off the scrambler. She easily incapacitates the rest of the team, but just as she's about to strike down Colossus, Cyclops tells her to stop. He wants to talk, but she won't listen. She wants to fight. But if she truly wanted to fight, why hasn't she struck him down yet? She is power and life incarnate, after all. It's because of love, which she claims to know nothing about, but her very existence stems from creation. She's enamored by an inhuman hunger for joy. It consumes her. While Scott unknowingly distracts her, Professor X blasts her with a mental blast. Dark Phoenix, now back in control, blasts Xavier back. Then he says that he must fight her, and he must win for the world. Xavier binds Dark Phoenix down with an unbreachable network of psionic circuit breakers. Jean falls down from the sky, naked, as her family approaches again. Thankfully, her dad gives her his robe. Jean's dad starts berating Xavier about this, but just before anyone can make a move, a bright glow flashes, and they're gone, leaving us to... We open on the moon, where the Watcher basically goes over everything I just did. We cut to the X-Men, who find themselves in the Shi'ar ship, asking Lilandra what the meaning of this is, to which she says the Phoenix must be destroyed. The X-Men reasonably ask why, to which they explained what happened to the Dubari. The X-Men refuse to hand her over, claiming her powers and control, and she suffered enough. Before Lilandra's warriors can take Jean, Xavier challenges Lilandra to a duel of honor. Lilandra needs to check with her allies before she accepts or denies. The Kree and Skrull leaders agree to it, donating their warriors to the cause. Lilandra gives the X-Men a day to rest and recover their strength. We then get page-long segments for all the X-Men, except Xavier and Angel for some reason. but they all end with the same way, deciding to stand by Jean's side. When they reconvene on the Shi'ar ship and they are confirmed ready, Lilandra has them beamed down to the blue area of the moon, which is basically an abandoned city, but on the moon. Jean picks up some psychic signal, and Angel goes to investigate, hoping to get a few good licks on Lilandra's Imperial Guard. Unfortunately for Angel, the moon has lower gravity than the Earth, so with one beat of his wings, he is outside the atmosphere. Don't worry, Storm saves him immediately, and the X-Men, to beat Lilandra's Imperial Guard, use the brilliant strategy of hide and seek, which means they split up, using the same teams as during the Kitty Pryde segment of this video, with Angel joining Scott and Beast joining Storm. Scott's team encounters Starbolt, Oracle, no not you, and Smasher. Storm's team encounters Warstar and Gladiator, who flips up the floor and knocks Storm and Wolverine into a pit. In said pit, they encounter Earthquake, who, using his very on-the-nose power, knocks Wolvie off balance, causing him to fall into a pit. As Storm finally gets a foothold against Earthquake, a woman named Hussar uses her Neurowhip to knock out Storm. Meanwhile, with Scott's team, they are holding their own, but that's it. They aren't winning. Smasher, with an honestly sick-ass costume, throws Angel into a pit, of which Nightcrawler, of course, jumps after him. With Wolverine, he's inside some freaky house, to which he meets the Watcher, who throws him out and tells him to never come back. Conveniently, near Storm. But his instincts are telling him, this isn't Storm. He throws her into a pole, which luckily reveals that it was a shape-shifting Skrull. Wolvie jumps at the Skrull, but a Kree warrior blasts him. However, this causes the Kree and the Skrull warriors to get into a tizzy about this. Back with Nightcrawler, he's looking for Angel when he encounters a woman named Manta, one of Lilandra's Imperial Guard. He's betting that Angel's disappearance has something to do with her. She spotted him, blasting him with a ray, telling him that trying to hide is a waste of effort. However, back with Beast, Gladiator punches him, sending him to some nearby rubble, causing Colossus to wonder if Gladiator is impervious to harm. Colossus hits Rip-Off Superman with a pillar, which just bends around him, and as these two gladiators fought, the building crumbled around them, which led Gladiator to be the only victor. Back with Jean and Scott, they tell each other they're both very special to each other, and they make their final stand. Once upon a time, there was a woman named Jean Grey and a man named Scott Summers. They were in love. They were young. They were heroes. Back on the ship, something's happening. Something big, something powerful. Phoenix is reborn, causing complete and total chaos in the Great Dreadnought. Xavier tells Scott there has to be another way to help Jean, but the only way is to keep her off balance and make her burn herself out. Wolverine fastball specials Colossus at Phoenix, but he can't do it. He pulls his punch, leaving Phoenix alive. Jean tells Scott he has to kill her, not giving them any choice. Jean freezes Scott in place. She tells Scott he should know how she's feeling. She's scared. She can feel the Phoenix taking over. Jean floats into the air, telling Scott that she loves him, and a part of her will always be with him. Then she kills herself, that being the tragic end to our tale. Alright, that was quite a bit, huh? To get straight into my likes here, the art of this whole book is so good. There's something about older comics that scratches an inch in my head, especially when they're on the blue area of the moon. Oh my god, the backgrounds are so dynamic. And I also love the moments where color takes over the background, like when the X-Men are taken by the Shi'ar. The emotion of this book is so good. It makes me feel like I'm living through this with the X-Men and the Shi'ar or with the Dubari. Speaking of the space side of this comic, I love the Dubari incident. It provides great stakes as well as being an amazing show of power. Claremont doesn't even throw the incident away as just a feat. It actually impacts the story from the point it happens. In the first part, I didn't really appreciate Colossus. I thought he was just there. But the second part of this book really made me appreciate him being there. Like when he holds back against Jean, it really establishes something about his character. I also really enjoyed the side character moments that I did leave out, like the president cameo or the Crane Skull rulers. It makes the world of this book feel really lived in. This book seems to be more about Scott and Jean's emotions rather than a typical superhero story. Sure, there are some superhero y aspects, but it is mostly about Jean's leading up to committing suicide on the moon. I also really like the setup for future stories that Claremont is laying down here. With the Sentinels and Beast's return to the team, that was done really well. I think Dark Phoenix is a great antagonist for this segment. It's a believable fall to villainy that is reminiscent to real life stories, and I think that's a major writing strength for Claremont. Kind of a nitpick with this book are Lilandro's team slash her Imperial Guard. Who are they? I feel there's some of the characters I need background information for. I don't have dislikes or really anything I found funny about this part. It was fun to see some epic action moments, or when Jarvis is talking to the president, but overall it was very serious. I think this is where I'm going to call it. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. The next video I'm working on is a review of Green Arrow's origin story in Green Arrow Year 1. And if you want to request a comic to read, feel free to comment or send an email to this address and I'll consider reading it. Thank you so much. See y'all later.